Hey all, this is Doc David, and I am joined today with my Therabro, as I like to call him, my buddy, Daniel Bates. He has a podcast called the Counselor Dan Podcast. And a little bit of history on Dan. I guess you can give your own history, but I'm going to give my history of you.
Of me?
Yes.
Okay.
In front of you. It's like I'm talking about you to people, but
And
it's
then
in front of you.
I'll give your history.
No, I don't know. People already know about me. They don't want to know your revisionist history of me. So Dan is a guy that I've known for a long time, and he has a couple degrees. He's a fellow counselor, and he's someone that makes me laugh, and I like to talk to him, and we like to mock life together. And we're both dads, we're both husbands, and I was thinking as I was thinking about the intro for you, like it could say, I love this guy. I think he's a great guy. I don't get to see him as much as I'd like, but we've done podcasting together since probably 2013, and then we've taken a hiatus because our lives get busy and we have kids, and so at least from my perspective, I want to try to do this more. So this is our first attempt. Okay, now you can go introduce yourself.
Wow, love is a strong word. You said you loved me.
I did. Well, no, I love you. I mean, I'm secure in my
I just I just
masculinity.
I just want to explore that more, you know?
Okay,
How
maybe.
how much you love me.
Well, we can do that on
Let's just talk about that.
another show, another episode,
I love
please.
you too, David. I
So
love you.
tell. So what did I miss? Tell me about yourself, so my listeners can know who you are.
Um I'm doing private practice in Camas, Washington. The practice is called Lacamas Counseling. It's going pretty good. Selling counseling like hotcakes. And I just came out with a new book, the Family Crisis Guidebook. So I like to write books. David and I co-authored a pretty amazing book called When Parenting Backfires. Y'all should check that out. And I too enjoy potting, and I don't see David nearly as much. So when he threw me this bone, I bit into it, and I'm not going to let go.
Is it juicy? Does it taste good so
There's a
far?
lot of cartilage, some calcium in here, some marrow.
Cartilage is good. So you, what's your family life like these days?
We have 3 kids under 5 with
Hmm.
a
Oh,
3-month old. So yeah, excuse me if I yawn during the podcast because I'm very tired.
and your wife is a nurse, so there's a lot of daddy kid time that you
Mm.
partake in.
Right. You know, some people will get offended on the internet if you or I call it daddy duty. They'll
Yeah.
just say, "Oh, that's just parenting." But I mean, I guess I use the term because my wife works full time and I work full time. So when she's with the kids, I I don't. I mean, she's on mommy duty. I mean, I'm not. We're just delineating that she's got the kids and I'm at work.
Yeah, I
That's
get you.
all.
No, I'm
That's
not
all.
offended. I
That's
get you.
all.
I
Calm down,
understand.
dude. Calm down.
Whoa, settle down. Easy.
Calm.
You're getting a little hype there.
Just calm
Um,
down, okay?
okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk about today was, I mean, people, I mean, I don't give intros about myself, but I have lots of kids too. I have 7 kids, and so mine are older. My youngest is 7, and my oldest is 20. And so I have been in that place where Dan's been, and it's definitely. Uh, I don't want to treat it.
It's a dark place. It's a dark time for me.
Oh, I mean, I think that should be a whole nother episode of our joke of child or parenting and how horrible parenting is, and how offended people get when you say that child rearing is no fun.
Well, people say, "Oh, you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have had kids.
Well, they say it
You
like,
can't complain because you had kids. You made the
do it,
choice."
do it again. Say it again. Right. And I think it's, anyways, you and I, we just kind of go off on tangents. So I have us written down on what we need to talk about, or we could just kind of go off on tangents all day. So we can save that for a future pod. So one of the things that when having lots of kids is like the more kids you have, that potentially the more things in your house that will break. Just so you know, I'm sure you've had things that have been broken already by your kids.
Oh yeah.
And then how messy your house can get with the more kids you have. And so one of the things that we decided, let's talk about how can you make your kids contribute to household tasks, chores, all of that. Right now.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm back.
Oh, it went away. Are you there?
I'm there. I'm here.
Was that you?
I don't know. Probably.
Okay. So what are your thoughts when you're thinking about how can your kids contribute to the house?
Well,
As you yawn again.
yeah. I've heard a lot of parents complain to me in counseling that their kids don't take initiative or they don't really feel a sense of ownership over the day to day of the house, of running the house. And it's a lot of work, right? To run a house, to pick up after yourself and put things away. And so these parents are frustrated because they're working and providing, and then they're also coming home and doing a majority of the domestic labor, if you will.
Right.
So, I think it's a fair point that they're frustrated that their kids aren't doing enough. Their kids are just sleeping in or lounging, or the workload is disproportionate on the parent side. And there's something about that isn't right. There's something about that doesn't jive, which is it should be more equal. The kids should be contributing. So then a lot of parents will. So I'll say, okay, you want your kid to be a contributor to the house, right? Like it's a team effort. You're all in this together, and they're benefiting from what you do, and so they need to contribute to the house. So then I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, because I want that for my kids. I don't want that to be a struggle. That you got to do the chore, or you got to pick up after yourself. I want them to want to do that. And I've just noticed my well, I've noticed with my 4-year-old, because my kids are 4, 2, and 8 months, or 12 months, whatever he is. But with my 4-year-old,
he was just born.
He was just born. He's just he's just baby, just a baby.
He's not cleaning up around the house,
right? But I've noticed with my 4-year-old, she wants to help. She wants to help out. She wants to make dinner with me. She wants to put the dishes away. She wants to help rake up the leaves and pick up the dog poop and walk behind me as I mow the lawn. And part of that's really irritating because she's like, slowing me down.
Right.
So, I mean, what I do is I kind of quash that. I say, leave me alone, go away, go find something else to do. I'm a little nicer than that, but essentially that's the message I'm sending her. That desire you have to contribute, I'm going to kill that and send you away. So then when do they learn? Oh, okay, mom and dad do all the work. When I try to help, I just mess things up or I get in the way. So I'll just go do what I want. And I mean, amplify that 1,000 times over,
which is
in the teen years.
I'll do what I want, which is usually making more of a mess that has to be picked up by the parent, which then causes frustration, et cetera.
Right.
Et cetera.
So then, I can see the genesis of this problem of what parents have told me who have teens. I can see it in the making at age 4. With my oldest, Yeah. And so I've read a couple articles where one was from NPR, and it was a journalist, I think was in the Yucatan, and she was visiting a family, and she just noticed all the kids were helping out without any prompting from the adults whatsoever. They were putting their dishes away, they were making meals, they were folding laundry, they were doing all the work without being told whatsoever. And there was an expectation. I mean, there's this journalist was saying there's a cultural difference there. Whereas in the Yucatan, there's an expectation from early on that kids will contribute, and they need to, be a team. They need to, belly up to the table and put some work in to the house because they're benefiting from the house. Right. Whereas in the United States, we just kind of delegate kids to play and, quash their desire to contribute. So then we have these problems that you and I have heard from parents, exasperated, tired, exhausted, frustrated, that their kids are just kind of entitled and dependent on them and not contributing. So to me, I think it's a pretty important topic. It's a frustration I've heard from a number of parents. And I think there are ways that you can encourage your kid to be a contributor to the house and feel a sense of responsibility. But there are a number of issues that come up with that. That's not just so easy as like, oh, okay, I'll make them a contributor. Because they do.
I mean, I would say I think it starts like if you have a teenager. If you're listening to this and you think, well, I have a teenager and I'm just going to get my teenager to start contributing. If you haven't been doing it, it's going to be I think it's going to be much more difficult to get your teenager to contribute than it is going to be to get your 4-year-old to contribute.
Yeah. I mean, it has to start at 4 years. It has to start at age 4 or age 5. I mean, you can't start this at age 15. You just, I think that
you could start at age 15. It's just it's going to be definitely a challenge. I think
it'll be a heck of a time, a real heck of a time doing it. But yeah, I mean, like, I think you have to up your tolerance for imperfection. Because my daughter wants to pick up the dog poop, let's say. So she's like picking up one individual log at a time. Which
with bare hands.
Well, like with a plastic bag, right? Which is great. Like, that's awesome. A kid who wants to pick up dog poop, like, that's pretty amazing, right? Like, she's excited for it.
Yeah.
But she's just doing it so slow. Like, this task that would take me 2 minutes, she's turning into like an afternoon. And I'm just like, I got other stuff to do. And I don't enjoy picking up dog logs that much, So if we could like,
for me, it's like, I got video games to play. Come on, kid. Hurry this process up.
Or like filling up the dog bowl with water. I mean, probably 30% of the water that's originally poured into the bowl makes it to its destination because it's spilled everywhere. You know what I mean? And that's frustrating, right? So I have to not react negatively when she does the chore and then focus on the positive that she wanted to contribute. I gave her a task and she did it imperfectly. And then it's just like, then it's just my own personal observation when I'm trying to train my kids to do something. It's just repetition, 1,000 times over. And then on the 1,001th time, you see them doing it somewhat successfully. And then it just builds. But it seems like there's a tipping point.
So I would say that, like, number one, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh man, how do I get this started? I think there's a shift that has to go into your thinking as a parent. Like with what you're talking about, the idea that this task needs to hurry up and get done versus here's an opportunity to teach my kid to contribute. And I would also add to connect with me.
Yeah.
Because over, like, teenagers, there's always that theme of my teenager just stays up in their room and they never want to connect with me and do anything with me. But if you're connecting with them, starting at 2, 3, 4, and it's also while you're doing some, a chore or whatever, an activity around the house, that sets you up for success, 10 years down the road when you're when normally a lot of people are frustrated with their teenager.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you made that point because like my daughter and I picking up just like little pieces of garbage that accumulate on the floor. I mean, stickers and ripped up pages and all the little junk. Um, I mean, I don't want that. I want to honor her desire to contribute, but I also want to make it fun and connecting, like you said. So
Yeah.
I'll make a game of it. Like I'll pretend she's the soldier and I'm the drill sergeant, and we'll just have a ball pretending having her march from each thing to each thing and saluting each other and saying yes sir, yes ma'am, and just making it goofy and fun. Um, that it's odd to say, but doing a chore becomes this relationally connecting activity. So I've just introduced this idea that you want to contribute, and that is a good desire. When you do contribute, you're rewarded with relationship, and in fact, the chore is not monotonous. It can actually be fun and pleasurable. So those are three really powerful ideas that I'm communicating to a 4-year-old. And then if I am consistent enough in sowing the seed, I'm going to reap the reward of that in a year, 2 years, 3 years, where she's more competent to do the
Yeah.
chores, but has all these positive associations with contributing.
You're like a regular male Mary Poppins. I mean, basically, right?
Yeah, I'm like
Does does
Murray
music
Poppins.
start? Does music start when you
I'm often singing when I
Oh,
do the chores.
oh wow. That,
So
that's quite the sight, I'm sure. You
I
should.
enjoy doing song parodies. So um,
All right. Well, okay. So I agree with you. Yet I think then you get up into like the tweens and the teen, junior high, high school age. And how's that? I mean, you don't have that age around you, and I do have that age around me right now. And
I mean, I work with that age.
the saluting and the breaking into song isn't going to be as um, easily accepted
Mhm.
at those ages. I mean,
Right.
you recognize that, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's why you got to sow the seeds early
Yeah.
and start at 4. And then basically, I mean, I do think there's kind of a window of opportunity, and if you miss it, you kind of miss it, which is if your kid has the desire to contribute, it doesn't matter if they're going to take forever. It doesn't matter if they're going to do it imperfectly. You have to uh, honor that desire, reinforce it, reward it, praise it as much as possible. So then, when you reward and praise, that's reinforcing, which just means that behavior is going to show up again and again and again,
Sure.
which is what you want. That's the behavior you want as a parent versus the entitled dependent behavior, which is irritating and what you don't want.
So I think
So,
also
yeah.
one of the things I would add is that if you're trying this with your kid, I mean, you're not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect in getting my kids to do chores and everything. One of the things I think that you might be worth considering is letting your kid be in charge of something
Mm-hmm.
at that young of an age, and it could be something like super innocuous. Um, moving the garbage from the upstairs bathroom to the downstairs garbage bin or something that gives them purpose that they feel like some autonomy over. I think would be a good self-esteem booster, and it also allow you as the parent to interact with your kid in a different way also.
Right. Because that seems to become a battleground, which is
Yeah.
control, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think if your kid wants to have control over a household duty, let them have it. I mean, unless there's a danger, it's going to cause some kind of physical danger. But if they're going to do it in a way that you don't like, but they still want to do it, then you've got to question, your reasons for trying to rip it out of their hands and not letting them have control, because it just becomes a battleground that's unnecessary, and it kind of again quashes this wonderful desire on a kid's part to contribute and to play a benefiting role in the household versus just take.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you think about a lot of times parents come in and we start talking about chores and stuff. And what do you think about paying money for chores?
I mean, I think there's good evidence to support that as a motivator for and I've seen it mostly with academics. So like Freakonomics, you've heard of Freakonomics, right?
Yeah.
I think they did a study where a school paid students to up their grades, and all the students, like, it worked. But I mean, there are some problems with that. Like, ideally you would find intrinsic motivators versus extrinsic motivators. Extrinsic motivators is you're motivated by a reward that's external to you, like money or praise, versus an intrinsic reward, which is being motivated to achieve something for the sake of achieving it. Like you achieve a sense of self-satisfaction from having done that activity. And that's what I'm trying. That leads to the greatest level of motivation. That leads to behaviors sticking around for a really long time versus the extrinsic motivators. That behavior doesn't really last. You've got to keep giving them the money. So the motivation goes away when the money goes away.
So I generally don't encourage it. I know I haven't read any studies from Freakonomics, and I think the school setting is maybe a little bit different than family setting, but I usually don't encourage it because then chores become this commodity. And so if you as the parent really want this chore to get done, and you're trying to teach your kid something, your kid says, what are you going to pay me? Or I don't feel like getting $10 today, or it's not worth their time.
Right.
Then it creates this frustration in the relationship. Whereas if you can start at an early age, that chores are just what you do when you live in this family.
Yeah, exactly.
And if there's extra chores, like, picking up dog poop, or some extra chore, and that's dependent based on family, then I think you can pay for those. But like basic chores of keeping your room clean, making your I don't make my kids make the bed.
Well,
but some people do make the beds.
Like there are, I think basic chores that shouldn't be rewarded monetarily, because they're just expectations that you're part of this family, and with being part of this family, you contribute.
Right.
But that isn't to say you can't reward nothing, without money, because you also want to teach your kid that work has a monetary value, and that if they work hard enough, they can make more money, and then they need to be responsible with that money. So that's also a good thing. But I think I agree with you, which is there's a base level of expectation. Clean up after yourself, put your food away, make your bed, put your clothes away, that kind of stuff. But then there's like extra above and beyond kind of chores that are monetarily rewarded, and then they can earn money from that. Like I remember growing up, our heat was a wood stove. That's what heated our house.
Would you live in the mountains of Appalachia or something?
No, I grew up in Tumwater.
I know.
But we heated our house with a wood stove, and so my dad would buy a quart of wood, which is just a massive amount of wood, and then my brother and I would have to stack it, and then we would cut kindling and all sorts of stuff. So
what do you know? Do you know what a cord is?
It's I don't know like the number.
It's four. I think it's 4 by 4 by 8
of like quantity.
Yeah,
just volume of wood. Yeah, I mean it's a. My dad would get like 2 quarts, so I mean it was a massive amount of wood. Like it was like a week-long project for me and my brother to stack it. And my dad, he took us to Toys R Us, and I very, very much remember this of getting an N64 for stacking 2 quarts of wood with my brother, and that was our reward. And that was a tidy sum of money back in the day. I mean, it was like 300-400 bucks for a gaming system, which is a lot back then. And now gaming systems are like 800 bucks or 900 bucks. But I mean, that wasn't every time I did a chore, I didn't get a N64. I mean, that was just for stacking the wood, which was a big
Man,
project.
your parents were jerks.
I know, right?
Not giving you one.
Not giving me a gaming system every time I picked up after myself.
Sad. Hopefully you don't abuse your kids like that.
Yeah, well.
So, all right. So let's wrap this up. So the kind of the points that I think are important to take away are that as a parent wanting to get your kids to participate more, there's a mind, like you have to be very purposeful in your thinking. I called it a mind shift earlier, but I think I'd change it. You have to be really purposeful and mindful of what's going on with your younger child when they're trying to contribute. Because I think contribution, when they're that young, contribution and connectedness potentially go hand in hand. And so there's these opportunities to connect with your kid. I even tell like adults now that have teenagers or parents that have teenagers that when they're teenagers doing a chore, it's a time that you have their undivided attention, and so doing it alongside them is a way to connect now as teens as well. Sometimes parents have a hard time with that because they just don't feel comfortable connecting. The second is let your kid be in charge of something. What would be some takeaways you have?
I mean, it's like I'm sure there's a term for this. It's escaping me at the moment, but it's one of those things where there's a steep level of effort in the beginning, but then once you hit kind of a tipping point, you don't have to expend as much effort to get as much reward. So you've got to really foster this sense of wanting to contribute in your kids, which does take a lot of time and effort because they do the chores imperfectly. They take time. They mess it up. And so you have to be able to tolerate that and not react to it negatively, but be positive and reinforce the things you want. And if you're consistent in doing that, you'll reach a tipping point where then your child will internalize those things and contribute without any prompting from you, without as much effort from you. And then you're kind of off to the races because that's a very easy thing to keep going. It takes very minimal effort to praise your child when they do the thing you want them to do. It takes very little effort to reward your child when they're already doing the thing you want. It's much harder to try to get them to start doing a behavior with rewards. If you do this, I'll give you this. Yeah. Versus you have already done this. I'm so pleased and happy with that. Here is this. That is so much easier. It's so much more positive. It's just a totally different dynamic in parenting. And so if you can pay the cost, if you will, up front early on, you're going to reap the reward, the benefit for years to come. And so, to me, I feel kind of like I'm in my own little window of opportunity right now, and I really want to seize it because of my kids are 4 and 2 and 8 months. And I don't want to let it go. I don't want to be dealing with what I've heard from so many parents with their teenagers, and I'm sure it will happen, but if I can invest in my well-being as a parent in the future, my future well-being now, I'll pay the cost now, gladly.
Carpe diem. Seize the day.
Seize the quid pro quo.
And you have a 3-month-old. I don't know why you keep going to like he's 8 months.
Did I say months?
Yes.
I meant weeks.
Oh.
I meant weeks.
You're like, and I have an 8-month-old. I'm thinking, wait, no.
That's a totally different baby.
Yeah.
a 2-month-old versus a 8-month-old. That's a
I
different.
just know your wife, who will never listen to this podcast, who, who would want to correct you, and my
Right.
wife will never listen to this podcast either.
I
We
keep
got really.
forgetting my I keep forgetting my kids' birthdays, so she's
Uh,
not happy with that.
Trust me. I mean, someone gets me on the phone and says, "Oh, what's your kid's date of birth?" And I have this moment of panic, like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
they're gonna think I'm not their parent," and I'm trying to get like some protected information because I can't remember my kids' birthdays.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
was picking my oldest up from Sunday school, and they must have learned some kind of Bible story. But when I showed up, and it was a new church to us, so
yeah.
it's like my first time, meeting these people. My daughter looks up at me and says, "You're a thief! You're a thief!" And I'm like, they're gonna think I'm stealing this child. Like I'm not
Uh,
her dad. I just have a pleasant face, and I'm a thief because I'm stealing this
yeah.
kid
Oh
from
man,
Sunday school.
kids say the greatest things.
Oh, it
Kids
was a
are
great introduction. Yeah,
kids are wonderful. They're just wonderful all around.
yeah.
Right. Well, hey, how can people track you down?
You
I'm sure
know,
we'll be on. I'll have you on again, but
oh,
just
that would be so great. Wow,
yeah, I
what a
know
privilege for
it,
me.
it's a privilege. I know
Um,
it is a privilege for you. Exactly.
I mean, you could go to my website, counselordan.com, but I mean, I'm most active on Facebook. So if you just go to put in Counselor Dan on Facebook, that's where I'm posting the most things, and that's where I'm my most active. So, and that's where people engage with me the most. So I would say go to Facebook and go to Counselor Dan and like my page and follow my page. And I mean, I put questions up there and all my content basically on that, and that's where you can find me.
I'm fairly sedentary on Facebook, uh,
Hmm.
but
You're not active.
I'm more active on Instagram. But I'm not as sedentary.
That's. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but I really don't. No one engages. I get very little engagement on Instagram, but Facebook, that's where I get a lot of engagement.
It's because you're just not attractive. I mean, that's
Probably.
that's what it's all about, right?
I mean, yeah, you're right.
I
You're
think
not
I
wrong.
think you're great looking. You're great looking
I know.
for a guy. Guy.
Yeah, it's good.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you coming on, and we will definitely, or I will definitely have you on more episodes in the future.
Sounds
Say hi to all your kids and your 9-month-old son that was born 3 months ago. Say hello to him. Hey, if you like what you heard, give us a like, follow Head Shrink Inc. Or email headshrinkinc@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Facebook at Doc David. Talk soon.